Real Recovery Show. You may recognize our guest. He's been on the show several times. I like talking to him, so here we go. But he came up with a topic today. The topic is...
what we get to do.
What we get to do
Yeah.
in recovery.
Well, the thing is that there's a lot of things that I have to do, and people always say, "No, you get to do them." You know what I mean? And it's true though, in a lot of different aspects of my life that I didn't think would be the perks in my life. Today actually is a great example because I was at work. I didn't really have much to do, so I ended up leaving to go meet my girlfriend. She was working a meeting that day at that time. And while I was there, my boss goes, "Why don't you just take the rest of the day off? You got no reason to come back." I said, "You don't have to tell me twice, right?"
Wow.
And my first thought was I get to go pick up my daughter, right, from daycare. I get to be the one she sees, because usually I'm like the bearer of bad news. I'm the one that drops her off, right? But today I get to be the person that releases her from her prison.
Oh my God.
That is daycare, you know? So I'm like super excited. And I get there and, well, first off, I'm at the meeting and I start to talk about it. And I start to cry because it's just like, I don't get to do things that I want all the time, right? I have lots of things that I have to do. And that's my problem, right? My daughter is one of those things that getting to spend time with her is definitely something that I want out of my life, right? And I get to do that. And I know I get to do that. But all these other things that I have to do are also things I have to do so that I get to do that, right? And that's really, when I make that transition into I get to go to work, right? Because I get to live in this house, because I get to put her in a nice neighborhood. And now today, the best gift I could ever give is I get to give her my time today, right? Which is, I don't ever get that opportunity. But so I teared up during the meeting. I couldn't even finish the rest of my share. And I was just so excited to leave that meeting to go, right? How different my life has become being from a place where everything is, desolate. I'm isolated. I'm very angry all the time. God must hate me. The people around me are constantly treating me poorly. I'm treating them poorly, not recognizing it, obviously, because I'm the victim at that moment in time. But to now be in a place where I get to do things, dude, and not only do I get to do them, but I have this joy in me that's so strong, it'll make me cry in a crowded room. Yeah. Right? I'm not really a crier.
I get this. I feel like one of the reasons why we hold on to kind of like an image or a little video clip in our mind of what it was like before, especially towards the end with our addiction or health or anything, is so that not only are we motivated to stay sober or clean off of drugs or anything, but also that we're willing to do what it takes, but also we have a deep appreciation and gratitude. I mean, even just celebrating milestones of recovery, and being able to talk about it or telling our story and looking back. But the attitude that we have is our biggest asset, and if we have a bad attitude, it's the real reason why we're suffering. Sometimes, at least I'll speak for myself, as an alcoholic or an addict, I defaulted into the victim mindset, that everything is happening to me, and not for me, and certainly not with me. And I'm not taking any responsibility for anything unless it's good. And then I'll take responsibility, because who wouldn't? But I remember when in my recovery, when somebody brought that to everybody's attention, that we could say I get to instead of I have to. It's so interesting how subtle that is in the mind, how we have our own inner pharmacy, and so we think a thought, and I'm capable of making myself, if I'm just a little bit sad, making myself suicidally depressed. Like, I'm capable, if I'm just a little bit disappointed, making myself irate, angry. I'm capable of telling myself a kind of narrative that will put me in a headspace that will make me feel like everything's just a hard sell, like everything is just so hard. Meanwhile, if I meditate and I pray and I turn things over and I ask for, the guidance to do what is my highest good and whatever my purpose is, and I let go of the results, and I come from a place of going like, wow, like, holy cow, like one step at a time, it's crazy how big life gets, right?
Yeah, and so there's two things I wanted to say of what you had brought up. One, we do get to celebrate people having clean time and sober time, but And the reason I say that is because I remember there was this dude that came up to me one time and he's like, hey, you got anything? And I was like, no, I got clean. And he's like, oh, good for you, bro. And I know what he's thinking in his head is, boop, delete me from my contacts, right? I don't need to know you anymore, you know? I don't celebrate anybody's anything, right? If you can't benefit me in that moment, then I don't get to celebrate you at all. And that's kind of a downside of my recovery is I don't get to celebrate anything for the most part. But another thing is that...
You don't get to celebrate anything? What do you mean?
In my addiction, in my addiction is what I meant. I don't really celebrate anything in my addiction.
In your addiction,
yeah,
not the downside of your recovery.
Yeah, no, okay. Not the downside of my recovery. The downside of my addiction. But I started talking too fast, I think. But I when I was thinking about you, I was thinking one of the great gets that is part of the recovery process is the fact that whenever you talk about the fact that you're going to do something, you always say, like, God told me, or you got this direction to do it, right? You were guided to do it. You always say that, and you get to listen, right? I get the opportunity to listen for my guidance today. I get to pray today. I didn't get to do that before. These are gifts of the program and the other things I've done in order to help me in my recovery and help me become the person I am today. I get to listen to advice, right? I get to listen to direction. Like, there's a lot in there, right? And more than just I get to go to work, right? I get a lot of things.
I think it's more than just our attitude about like how we're saying it too. I think it's really an understanding that, you know, when I was in my addiction, and I'm curious how you felt when you were in yours, but when I was in my addictions, severals, I talked more than I did. I had bigger plans than I moved my feet to do. I held on to big stories, narratives in which, you know, everything was a big fat trigger and I was walking around with my skin on inside out. I was too focused on the people in my life, and I would self-abandon, and then I would swing past any kind of semblance of normalcy, and I would end up in isolation. And as this happened, and as I self-medicated, my health deteriorated, my social life deteriorated, definitely lost all semblance of like a feeling like I was living in any kind of purpose. And my world got smaller. It got smaller and smaller and smaller. And to start off with, I had a lot of survival mode kind of thinking anyway. You know, and I would have this habit of, that's it, I'm going to motivate myself, do some self-help stuff, and I would climb out of my pit of emotional morass, and then I would end up like plugging ahead, and I'm gonna do the thing, and I would overwhelm myself, overcommit, have unrealistic expectations of myself and other people, and my narrative would be always shame-based. I'd pull out the rug from myself in my own life, and I would think that other people did it, they left, I'm abandoned, you know, I'm unlovable, whatever my narrative was, and my world again would go back to being small, and I was always guarded and having people at an arm's distance and like small, you know. I used drugs when I was in college and manipulated my time schedule of my classes just to be able to get good grades, you know. It's because I was always like my inner chemist, you know. I was always trying to like manage Lisa.
Yeah. You
know, and I would lie to myself, and I would tell myself everything I was doing was either to be able to accomplish more, to cope better, you know, with my hard life, you know, which was made harder by the very things I was using to cope with, and the people I was attracted to, like you were talking about old friends who would delete you from their phone if they felt like you weren't going to use with them, or point them to where they could find stuff to use with. Anyway, I had fair weather friends. I had people who wanted me for reasons, not because they cared about me, you know, and that also fed that feeling of knowing that somebody doesn't care about you and you're with them anyway, and you hate yourself too, and like your life is so small. So I mean, yeah, try telling the person that's in that headspace, you get to do this, you get to do that. It's something that happens. Something that happened for me that I felt like I never thought I was going to live that long, and so my headspace now is around the idea that I'm in the bonus round, you know, because the programming that I had in my mind, the trajectory of it, was self-destruction. And you can't, I mean, human beings are built to like overcome, to survive, right? We've overcome so much generation after generation, and yet some of us have like some people have a weak immune system. We have a weak ability to live life on life's terms. You know, we take things way too personally. Everything becomes so self-centered until we're in recovery, and then all of a sudden, like it's been said, we get a new pair of glasses, and everything that we felt like was so hard to do, and this for me is what helps with me, is that I'm not doing it alone, and my intuition is guiding me, rather than me thinking I gotta do that, you know, like just alone. And then I get to, you know, like I get to because I'm not, like I had someone working in the store through a program, and she like really went, like she really had a really hard day. Her dad, you know, disconnected her phone, wouldn't tell her where her son was. And she didn't have a car, so she had taken a bus all the way from like North Las Vegas to do stuff in the store for community service, welfare, whatever, right? And so like she lost her ever-loving mind, you know, and she did not even know where she was. And she didn't know where she was. I'm not saying she didn't know where she was, like, where am I, and she was disoriented. I mean, I felt guided to put her in the car instead of have her go back, find out where her kid was with the bus, which would take like forever, right? Mm-hmm. I felt really guided to stop. Now, my ego could be like, I'm a busy person. I have so much shit to do. Are you kidding? But my intuition said, this is where I want you to be right now, right? So I drove her, and as I drove her, and I prayed first, and I said, okay, whatever it is you want said. And what came out of me left a lasting effect on me after I dropped her off. It was, I know you think that you're just here doing these hours, but you have hit the mother load of support. Like right now you are experiencing dysfunction and addiction and like all that, and you're going to the hardware store on a daily looking for bread. You know, your dad's not going to show up the way you want him to, but that's, you know, and he's high or whatever, you know, like on and on and on. And like, and I was like, come do your hours, but avail yourself of these meetings. Like there's codependency ones and adult children ones, and like, and it's like for free and whatever like that. And it was like, as I was telling her this stuff, my headspace got to, wow, we get to do this. Like I got that like feeling of, oh my God. And I was like, and I said, you know what? I said, we need to be empowered women. We can't be turning power over to other people. And all these things that were said through me, when I got back, I ended up having something happen. I could have easily had the interpretation of it happening to me. I like somebody who was working on a project with me just looked like they just stopped in the middle of it. And I was like, wow, if I hadn't had that conversation telling her about how she could be an empowered woman and not give too much power to another person, like where is God, and then have this thing happen, it's fresh in my head, and now I have the right attitude, right, to go through the thing that happened way easier than I would have otherwise. So it's like, I'll say this last thing, in recovery, we have this recovery headspace that basically, instead of seeing everything as it's up to me, by myself, I have no support, I have no tools, you know, it's not really a classroom in which I get to level up. I don't really, you know, it's like, instead of seeing it from that perspective, everything we get to do allows us to be able to handle everything else. And our world gets quite abundant feeling, no matter what the pocketbook, the bank account, you know, no matter whether or not there's a specific relationship or something like that, right? Because there's this feeling of being lit up, not like high lit, but like
I would hope not.
yeah, but it's a
but
better.
still, it kind of does feel like that. It's this
It
overwhelming
does.
spirit. That's
It
in
is
you.
a high.
Sunlight of the Spirit is what I always call that feeling. That's what, or the Holy Spirit actually. That's what. So I remember somebody telling me that the Holy Spirit was a breath, right? Just a breath, and I always thought about the Holy Spirit being the breath of God, like telling you, "Hey, you did good. You know, you're in the right place." I feel that. So when you were talking about being in our addictions and stuff, I was thinking about the fact that when I get to back then, I was very victimized, right? It's only if they would let me, right? If that person would just give me the chance, right? I always put myself in that position. I never get to do anything because I'm always waiting for someone to offer me something. And I do that all the time. And I don't think I remember there was one point in time I was like, I'm going to build vending machines. I have no money.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have no money. I'm in a trailer park. I am broke. I'm high as hell. And I'm going to pick apart parts from different broke down trailers and make these vending machines. I don't know how to do that. Right? I don't know how to do that. And somehow in my mind, it seemed legit. Like, I could do this. Don't even worry about it. I could do this. So I'm like literally trying to take from different pieces and stuff. There's nothing's going to get finished, right? Because I don't get to do it, right? I want to do it. I think it's nice, but I don't get to do it because I haven't put in any of the effort. Right? And I'm going to do that a whole bunch throughout my entire drug use. So when you were saying all that, and I was thinking to myself, you're right, because you can't really put in the position I get to when I'm a junkie. I don't get to do anything, right? I have to get high, otherwise I'm sick.
We're chained.
Yeah.
We're chained to an addiction, to a substance, to a behavior. And we're not going to be free unless we choose to do whatever it takes. And we get that tipping point. But then it's kind of amazing because sometimes when we get into recovery, we could think that it's going to take a lifetime to be able to heal or get back the kids or have a relationship or get healthy or fix our liver or fix our immune system or
get your own place, especially if you're in sober living.
Get your own place.
I can't wait to get away from
Get your
these
own
people.
car.
Yeah.
Maybe clear your name, or get out of jail or whatever. Pay off debt or anything, right? It could be such a but it's interesting because this is the mindset that bases happiness and serenity and peace and security on outside things, right? And the feeling that I can only be okay if this is all a certain way is, to me, one of the biggest reasons I use drugs and alcohol, because it can never be consistently the way I felt like it needed to be.
No.
Today it can't.
No, I was going to say.
It's my perception. Yeah. That's the thing I need to focus on, not what's happening outside of me and telling myself I stamped this good, I stamped this bad.
And actually, I was telling myself a couple days ago, I was like, I need to work out, obviously, right? I've done some damage. I've done some damage. So I was remembering when I was younger, because you were talking about this earlier, being a bodybuilder, but I remember being able to lift, curl 55 pounds with one arm, right? And then I tore my muscle because I wasn't prepared for that.
Yeah.
But then I thought, well, what if the day ever comes where I can lift 60? And then I thought to myself, I'm not going to work out so I can lift 60 pounds. I'm going to work out and then I can lift 60 pounds, right? That's the difference, right? I get to do these things. I get to practice my life.
You just curl your kid.
Yeah, right? No joke. She'd probably love it too. But if I do the things I'm supposed to do, all that stuff's inevitable, right? We get all these blessings inevitably, right? But I can't do them in order to get that. Right, like when I find my recovery, I don't do that so I get to get my own place. I find my recovery, I find connections, I find a job, I find this sunlight of the spirit, which I believe brings a lot of people in, right? And then all of a sudden now, all these doors start to open. I don't know where I would have been if I wasn't as open-minded and compassionate to not only my daughter, but to my daughter's family that wanted to visit her, that her mom wasn't exactly around to make that happen, so I did. And those same people let me stay in their house. Now, if you would have asked me,
right, if that was going to happen.
3 weeks. Yeah, if that was first off, if that was going to happen, but 3 weeks later, do you get to stay in that apartment? I'd be like, no, I have to be in this apartment. This is the only choice I have right now, But it was the best blessing ever. So if I could just look at the I get to, right, that would have made a bigger difference for me. But even looking at it now, it's still great, right? Because I get to look back on my life, and that's kind of the benefit of being a part of recovery is something I also recognized a while back, is that the future doesn't really exist, right? We can have intuition, but for the most part, I don't believe the future exists. But the only time I can actually prove that the future existed is when I see it in the past, right? So if I want to change my future, I have to look at my past, right? And if I can do that, right, and not build all these resentments, realize all the things I got to do to get me to where I am, all of a sudden I feel better about my recovery. And I think that that's one of the huge perks of being able to get to do it. Plus, actually looking into the things, I just appreciate the connection you have with your higher power. I've always admired it, right? That's always been the hardest thing for me, is I believe there is a higher power. It's just really hard for me to rely on them, right? Or have it give me direction. I've just always had an issue with it. And whenever I let it go, right, and I watch people that let it go, and you'll inspire me enough to let me do it for a little bit, right? But then I'll get locked into my wheelhouse, and then all of a sudden it's everything outside of it is breaking me down. So I have to focus back on it again. But I get to try to do that today, where I never would have done it in my addiction. Like ever. Even prior to my addictions. Right? My mom brought me to church thinking I got to pray to God when I went to church. All I wanted was to leave so badly. But today I get to do that. Today I get to connect. And I've seen the way people belly laugh when they connect. Right? I've seen the way people find love in relationships and with family members and with jobs and lifestyles that traditionally people wouldn't find love in, and they find it. So that's pretty cool that I get the opportunity to find that today. I might not, but I get the opportunity.
I like the word inspire, because just like you were talking about Holy Spirit or sunlight of the Spirit, to me, inspire means to have the Spirit inside speak up. And there's something that's so that changes how I feel about everything when I feel and I listen to my inner yes. When I feel like, yeah, this is the next right step, life becomes an adventure. I'm so interested. Why do I feel guided to do that? That's so fascinating. Like, oh my God, I got in the car with her, and I felt such a yes to go and to do that with her, that I was like, okay, this is going to be good, because I have no idea what this, Yeah. I have no idea. And there was this one part where, the traffic went to almost a standstill, and my phone had said it was going to take a half hour, and I was no longer believing that. And I was in this, and I realized that how fast I get her to where she's going has nothing to do. I didn't really need to drive her for her to get to where she needed to go. But the conversation was so frank, and it was maybe because she wasn't really wanting to go to meetings or something, that wasn't a thing. Maybe it was the only conversation she would have had where somebody was able to talk to her, who knows, in the way of one alcoholic addict or somebody who grew up in addiction to another person, So I will say this too, that not only does, following the yes make me feel lit up, but it gives me the power to carry through and do the thing. It's so debilitating to have toxic thinking. To have the overhead of the kinds of thoughts that I had constantly, the things that I said. Be careful about the things that you say to yourself. You're the one who's hearing it. I will even point out, one thing right now, the idea when we say, I can't listen, I can't hear, I can't follow guidance. You can, right? But the mind will go, okay, I guess I can't. I have to watch the things I tell myself I can and can't do, I can't do. I have to watch. If I get really blocked feeling because something's coming up to heal, and I start saying, oh my God, I can't hear you, God. And then I'll get this intuition through that because I'm seeking it. I'll get something that comes through the cracks of my own block, and I'll say, yes, you can. Affirm it. Affirm it. Believe that you can. And start acting as if somebody who believes it, lean into it. See what resonates to pick for clothes, Don't judge what I'm wearing today. See what happens when you go for a ride and you ask where to go. See what happens when you pray first and you ask, talk to me and through me, and see what resonates for you to say. You know, like, see what happens when you think, who should I call right now? And somebody comes to mind and you feel a yes and you do it. You know, and let go of the results and practice with it and play with it. But watch the temptation to say you can't do something, because you're the one telling yourself that, and you're the one listening to that, and that's what happens. So when I was telling myself toxic shit all the time, oh my God, that's so exhausting. Worrying all the time, right? But the way I narrated things, everything was like, I felt like a piece of shit. I felt like totally unworthy. Like, I didn't want to look at myself, do any kind of writing on myself. I didn't want to anything, because I was so afraid that I was going to find out that the things I thought about myself were true. The things my mom said were true. I was afraid of finding that out. So it took me a while to be willing to really look at that stuff. But in the meantime, I thought I was doing the easier, softer way by not looking at this stuff, by not sorting it out, by not finding out what's going on. And it wasn't. I was living with a bully inside my own head that was exhausting me. And all of my plans to do anything, I had high ideals of things I wanted to accomplish and do, but I was exhausted all the time, like chronically fatigued because of my own stress, the cortisol, the depression, the focus, the magnification of all this negative toxicity. So when we say we get to, it's one of the small things that we flip how we speak to ourselves. Instead of saying, I have to do this, I have to do this. If you say, I have to do this, it feels stressful. It doesn't even matter what you say you have to do. It feels stressful. And so it's exhausting. But like I get to do taps into this adventure, this freer part, the part that comes from choice. And it's able to have the energy and tapping into the spirit, and also to talk to other people about it in a way that other people get excited about it too. And next thing you know, you have people to do it with, and it doesn't take as much energy, and you're not living in self-doubt, talking yourself out of stuff, and things actually get accomplished. And little by little, the world gets easier, right? And we're able to do things that we have more faith in a higher power or other people, or more importantly ourselves. Not that that's more important than God, but whatever. and the energy, yeah, well, we know that. But the energy that we release by not constantly being so negative, right? The vibration of that, the energy that we release, but now we're focused one step at a time on being able to do things and enjoy and let go and have fun with it and experience life. And we get to show up. We get to take it one day at a time. We don't have to think, like you said, with the future, a whole 5 years ahead. You know, we can think, what could I do maybe in the future? But we stay anchored in today, and we live today. And there's something about that I'll say this and shut up. There's something for me, because I have epilepsy, right? So I get seizures, and to me that is the epitome of exhaustion. Is when your lips start going numb and lights become too sensitive, too bright, and your ears and your hearing becomes too sensitive, and whatever. It's like when it very, very rarely ever happens now. Why? Because the energy management, the way I talk to myself, the tapping in, the meditating, the listening to God, the letting go of the results, the not sitting and overthinking about every little thing all the time, right? Frees up so much in my life, in my time, in my body's energy, in my mood. It allows me to show up and be like, okay, bonus round, I get to do this. And when I get into a headspace that gets too focused on what I have to do, and I start feeling like the survivor again, I have to get like are you kidding? You get to do this today. Who knows what tomorrow's going to be? You get to do this today. Just be today. Just be in today.
Yeah, I like how you put those two together. The saying "I get to do this today" can lead to positive affirmations right across the board. That makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of the times when we have these things in we learn in recovery, I don't know where they come from, right? And so many people have heard them for such a long time. There's a study where these monkeys had to be in a room and they put bananas on top of a ladder. Have you ever heard this before?
Mm-mm.
So they put these bananas on top of a ladder, and every time one of the monkeys would climb up to get the banana, they would turn on the sprinklers, right? So
Oh.
not very happy about that, right? Monkeys do not like water too much. So every time a monkey would go up there, they get hit with the sprinklers. So all the other monkeys would yank him down. The second one started to go up. So then they started replacing the monkeys, right? One right after another. And at one point in time, it's all new monkeys, right? And yet none of them will go after those bananas. None of them have ever seen the sprinklers on. They have no idea what will actually happen, but they do know if they go up there, it's bad news, right? And they've told each other for years and years. Now, obviously, monkeys don't have the way to break things down, but I think a lot of the times when I'm in recovery, I hear these terms or phrases, and people tell me to do them, and they know you should do them, but they can't tell me why I should do them, right? Or what they actually benefit you from. And I think knowing that...
so many people don't even know why.
Yeah, right? And they will say it to you, and they'll say something like, let go, let God.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine, Jerry, right? He's a mentor of mine, and he would always tell me, let go and let God, Kevin. I'd be like, I don't know what that's supposed to mean, bro.
Right.
Like, how do I let it go to God? Like, God has never spoke to me not one day in his life, you know? I've never heard him, nothing like that, so I don't understand what that means. To me now, what it means is I just practice my principles no matter the circumstance or consequence. If I can do that, I've let go, right? Because no matter what, I'm going to be the best version of me that I can be, no matter what's happening around me. When I recognize that, let go and let God makes sense. Right? Because I have an idea what my higher power was. I made it up. Right? I made the connection. And when I made that connection, I felt the guidance, which I don't know that's what it is at the time. But that guidance definitely told me, yeah, you're on the right path. We've made a relationship now. Let's build on that.
You know, it's interesting because, like, while you're in the beginning of what you're saying, I'm thinking, yeah, you know, but there are things you could read and they'll tell you what that means and stuff like that. But better that we don't. Better that we just say the thing, because over time in recovery, it means something different. I don't think I would want somebody at some set point in their recovery telling me what let go and let God means, because it would just mean that day for them, you know? But over time, it's gotten a deeper and deeper meaning. Like in the beginning, when I would do the serenity prayer and like let go and let God, it was the pink cloud of like, oh, thank God, it's not up to me, it's not up to me, it's not up to me. You know, and then, but to me it was akin to, okay, I get to go back to sleep and God's going to do all the things and I'm going to open my front door and everything will be sitting in the package and I'll be good.
I will hear the birds.
Yeah, like, oh, you know. But over time, what it was, as it took more and more responsibility for my thinking and my feelings and my behavior, I realized that let go and let God was letting go of my story about who I think I'm supposed to be and what I think is so important and everything I'm attached to. Like everything that I think is so important that I need it to be a certain way for me to be okay. Let go. Let God. You know? And that's just where I'm at now, right? But like if you would talk to future Lisa in maybe a few years, maybe I would have another thing to say about that. So maybe it's good that there are these phrases that maybe people can't articulate where they came from. I couldn't tell you where that specific phrase came from, you know? It could have been somebody high.
Yeah, right? Right. So let go and let God, man. What are you going to do?
At this time, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to go to commercial. And please remember that the opinions expressed here are strictly those of the people who gave them and do not represent any program, any 12-step program, or are meant to replace your own intuition or replace any medical advice or anything like that. And it's going to be progress, not perfection. Where did that one come from? But that's very handy right now. So anyway,
Yeah.
So we'll see you in a bit. The Meeting Space is a facility with over 100 weekly recovery meetings for addiction from alcohol, drugs, sex, food, gambling, codependency, and PTSD. When someone is scared to go to their first meeting, we walk them through the process, ask them and answer questions to assuage their concerns. Many are court-ordered to attend, and we provide free court papers and teach them the process. Our glass-enclosed, soundproof children's playroom
enables parents to be in a meeting while watching their children. We have healing workshops, craft fairs, and special authors who come to teach and sit with our fellowships. During COVID, we were declared an essential business by the County Commissioner's Office. We were kept open so that we can continue our daily work with traumatized chronic relapsers and those who would have used alcohol or drugs in isolation. Local businesses rent our space as well to financially help with this mission, and they get to have a great location for their business meeting or training. The recovery store in the center of our facility provides literature, clothing, medallions, and custom gifts to encourage, aid in, and celebrate a person's recovery from alcohol, drugs, PTSD, or unhealthy behaviors. Both the recovery store and the meeting space are open every day, including holidays. Saving lives, educating the community, reducing social stigma, providing a safe place for people to heal. Our nonprofit is supported entirely by donations by people like you who want everyone to have a place to go to heal.
Welcome back to the Real Recovery Show. Okay, so before the break, we were talking about all the things we get to do and our attitudes about things, etc. And now let's talk about what we get to do now that we never thought was possible before when we were in our disease.
I get to have a meal and then sit in the restaurant, right? I don't have to run out to go smoke or anything like that. That's one of the things that in this process that's one of the big perks for me. I get to travel anywhere I want because I don't have to worry about whether or not there's going to be drinks or drugs there, right? Because how many birthday parties did I not go to if there was like at a park? You're like, what am I going to bring my own beer? Like, how much can I possibly bring to a park, you know? I'll look like a weirdo if I bring a 30-pack to a child's birthday party.
Right.
Let's have it at the pizza shop where they serve beer so I don't have to look like a fool, you know? Things like that.
I get to go places and follow through with commitments.
Yeah.
I get to show up because I used to not make plans because I was afraid that future me would not be able to follow through.
Exactly.
You know, and so I get to show up. I get to try things new, you know, where old me would have talked myself out of it because if I didn't feel comfortable, I get to step outside my comfort zone a little bit at a time, and then my comfort zone gets bigger. You know?
Yeah. I get to eat whenever I want.
Well, I was able to do that.
I was not
In fact,
able to
that's
do
one of
that.
my addictions. So like I ate whenever I wanted to, but I get to do things without planning it around alcohol and drug or any kind of addiction. Like I get to everything was always around, you know, how am I going to feel? Am I going to need something? You know, will I be able to drive? You know, who am I going to be with? You know, like the amount of planning. Where am I going to get it?
Yeah.
How much do I have? How do I keep it a secret? You know, like I get to actually live without the burden of having to carry, how am I going to do this, you know, all day long, every day.
I got a good one. I get to go to sleep at night.
You get to go to sleep?
Dude, I fall asleep so hard, so fast. When I first found recovery, man, I was at this sober living joint and they couldn't put me to sleep. They just couldn't do it. They had me on trazodone. That didn't work because I had an adverse reaction to it, so I got very, very angry. Right? Which I'm not an angry person, so for me to get very angry means there's something wrong, right? And I found out it was the trazodone. So they had me on a bunch of Benadryls, zinc, melatonin. Like I was taking bunches of them to try to put me on. I just could not sleep. And
finally they give you a horse tranquilizer.
Yeah.
And everything was okay.
No,
I'm just kidding.
They did not. But I ended up doing some work in some other places, right? And that helped me relieve myself of some of the issues I have. So then I could actually fall asleep at a good time. But now, my life has gotten to a position where it's pretty good, dude. It's pretty good. It's very exhausting, but it's pretty good. So when I go down and I say, I'm going to go to sleep, like literally, I can lay back, my eyes closed, out like a light, dude. I don't have to worry about it at all. That is one of the biggest blessings of this whole thing that I could ask for. I don't even know how many times I would wake up about to cry if I wasn't crying and have to run and go get high real quick because all my life would hit me. Right? I'd have that moment of that Kenny Rogers song, I just dropped in, to see what condition my condition was in. And when I'd wake up, I'd have that moment and I'd be like, where are you? What are you doing? Your life is terrible. Did you see what you've done so far? Look at these terrible people you
Go back to
yourself.
sleep. Medicate.
Boom, I would run down the street and find some if I didn't have some right next to me, right? And just lock that up right quick. I don't have to do that no more either. I get to just wake up in the morning and go I bought a fancy coffee machine even. Pretty. The pot and a pod.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get to go to a supermarket and I get to walk down every single aisle without being tempted.
Yeah.
I remember when I first got into recovery and I would walk down in the supermarket, I would make a specific effort to avoid certain aisles, the alcohol aisle and the dessert aisle. Like
That's
all the
real
fresh.
though.
Dude,
Yeah.
it's brutal.
Dang.
Brutal.
I like
and
dessert
now
aisle.
it's like, oh man, I get to feel free. You know what else? I get to talk about things that I could never talk about to anybody because I had so much shame and so much fear of what people would think. I get to talk about stuff without having any large, huge emotions even attached to it anymore, right? I get to talk and I get to laugh about some of the insane things that I did, insane things that I thought, and I get to use that to help other people.
I remember I went to my mom's church maybe a few weeks after I had gotten clean. And I was in the church, and it was the first time I ever felt accountability, like limitless accountability. Like everything I did, I thought to myself, if I was standing in front of Jesus, I couldn't say, you made me do this, right? I have to take accountability. When I did that, I would start crying, right? And there's certain things I could talk about that would tear me up, man. Like the reason I got clean was because my mom didn't answer the phone on her birthday, which would always get me going. And other things I did in my life. Now I can talk about all those things freely, right? And help people find a solution through my life. But I have a hard time talking about the joy in my life, right? It's different. So how beautiful is that? Like, I get to talk about the joy in my life, and it's even hard to do because there's so much of it. That's cool. Yeah, I didn't feel that until today, but there's a lot of joy in my life. And when I tried to talk about my daughter, I get to go pick her up. I literally cried because I couldn't even get the sentence out. Yeah. I just stopped talking, just like everybody kept staring at me all awkwardly, like a bunch of a-holes, you know. It's like, look away, you know. And so that was I get to do that.
Yeah.
Right. That's my kind of struggle.
I get to drive down the street, see the police pulling somebody over, and not have a heart attack thinking that it's me.
Yeah. Oh, that happened to me just a couple of days ago. That's so funny. They were coming down the rainbow, and I was driving, and the lights were on, and I was like,
shit.
I was moving right over.
Yeah.
Come on through, police officer.
Right.
I don't call them names or nothing.
Right
now. I just let them do their thing. How nice is that?
I call them the po-po still.
Yeah, do you?
It's cute, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's not even a bad one. I'm talking about the bad ones, you know? Or look at them like they're the villain in this situation of ours, you know? Like, that's crazy.
I get to be fully present in my relationships.
Yes. That's a good one.
Yeah. I get to practice listening and really hearing people.
My mom allowed me to be her power of attorney. Right? I get to be her power of attorney. I don't know why I am, but she decided that was the gig. So I get to be that today, right? I get to be the one my family comes to when they're having addiction issues or just emotional issues, right? I just want someone to help remind them that it's not that big of a deal. I get to realize that today I affect the world. I affect not only my world, but the world that I live in. So there's a lot of gets, dude. There's a lot of things I get to do. More than just the terrible things that I have to do that I have to transition into getting to doing, right? But I literally do get to do a lot of great things, like every day. And that's why it's great that we're going through this list of things that we get to do.
It's an interesting kind of twist on the gratitude list. But I just started, as I told you, I just started working out again. I used to bodybuild when I was in my late teens, and then I was a stripper for all of the 20s, and so I have a lot of muscle.
Yeah, like super buff legs, I bet, huh?
I have a lot of muscle.
Yeah.
But I'm 52 years old, and I haven't been working out. And so my excuse, if you will, was COVID, which is like 4 years ago, and of all that. And I stopped working with her. And she's my friend in recovery, and she's trained people. She's trained people who like competed and stuff, and I'm not looking to do that. But I was wanting somebody, I have injuries, a spine injury, blah, 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 and I just really wanted somebody who can like work with me and do that and get back into whatever, because And like, I kept thinking about it, and it was like gnawing at me, and I felt like, come on, Lisa, like, do this, call her. And then it was her birthday, and I saw it on Facebook, and so I was like, oh, happy birthday, by the way, I would really love to get back to that. Oh yeah, give me a contact. You know, and that's what I get to do. I get to turn I wish I could, or I really should, into actually doing. You know, and I went and I worked out, you know, and my spine has this thing, and I was in a lot of pain, and I get to go and do it in pain anyway. And I was like, well, we got to be careful because my neck with my injury. And she's like, and she says, you know, she says, I feel like, because she knew about my injury from before, and she says, you know what, I feel like it's just weak. I feel like you need to build your strength up in your body. And my ego wanted to be like, don't you know my story about my injury? But my intuition said yes. And I heard it, and I looked at her, and I have these weights, and I'm doing this thing, and I was like, all right. And she said to me, and I felt God speaking through her, she said, this pain, this suffering that you're going to go through is going to be temporary. Like, you're going to hurt. And I was like, well, I'm hurting right now anyway. And I did it, and yesterday, I felt so good doing that, because I just really felt like I was doing what really resonated as the right thing in the moment, you know. And a crazy thing happened, which I never would have predicted. Some of the pain that I was experiencing went away while I was working out. So now I'm excited.
Yeah.
Because what are the possibilities?
Is she in recovery, this person?
Mm-hmm.
Dude. I don't know, your delivery might have been better than the way she delivered it, but I feel like she'd be pretty intense. No. Like you're in there.
Yeah, I really should have her on the show.
This too shall pass.
I think I'm going to have her on the show. I'm going to ask her if she wants to do it, because she has a great story too. Absolutely, absolutely. But, so this is my point, you know, like, we really, life can be pretty hard when we're in our addiction. And even before we get like really mired in our addiction, a lot of us, not all of us, but a lot of us have had some pretty gnarly stuff happen before our addiction, and then interwoven into our addiction, because you know, we were already maybe with some dysfunctional people and some things happened, but now in our addiction, we're attracting more dysfunctional people, and we're the cause of a lot of our own misery, and then it builds up, and then our life becomes just gray, you know, and like, why should I even bother? Why should I even bother? You know, like, what's the point of anything? Like, every day, I was this like depressive philosopher, wanting to question, like pulling lint out of my belly button, pontificating about why I should even be on this earth. Like, there's no happiness, no joy, no I get to in that, right? And today I do question, you know, but I'll say this one thing. I have been feeling like, oh, you know, I need to get back to reading. I haven't been reading. I've been working insane hours, right? I need to get back to reading. And then finally I just did it. I was like, make the time. You have the time, make the time. Just make the time. And so I made the time, and I started reading, and I felt the stuff that I was reading, the spiritual stuff that I was reading, I felt like, oh, my soul's getting so fed. And then I felt like, I get to read this. And I told myself, I get to do this every day now. This is my thing now. And so I've been doing it. I get to do it. Like, really, I have time to do that. I have time to read something. I just didn't tell myself otherwise.
I had a client of mine say that exact same thing to me. She's like, I need to stop saying I make time. There's always time, right? I just don't use it efficiently, or I don't use it effectively for what I want. Yeah. And I was just like, dang, settle down. You know, she was getting a little super irate over it. But it looks like she's going to be a successful person. So, you know, she lived in this house that's only a lake entrance only. Right, and behind her looked like Hawaii. It wasn't. It was someplace in Canada, but it looked very much like Hawaii. And it's just really cool. But that is something that I got to remember. Yeah.
Whenever I would, and this actually started with an ex-boyfriend, he would say, I don't have time. I didn't have time for this. I didn't have time for that. And something came out of me once where I said, oh, no, if it's important enough to you, it's important enough to you. You will make time, sir. You know, and all of a sudden I was like, you know what? This is so true. If I ever say I don't have time, it's because that's not high enough on my priority for what it is that I feel like I have to do. And if it is something that I really feel like needs to get done, then I need to look at what I've been putting before it.
Yeah. And sometimes what you put before it is more important. right? There's nothing you can do about
And
it.
then you don't have time.
Yeah.
But the point is, it's not the highest priority.
Yeah, that is the point. That's a solid point. Like, if you take all the weights off of it and all the negative connotation of, I don't have time for something I believe I should be doing. It's just, if you don't have time, you don't have time, right? But if you can recognize that, it can't be, you don't have to say that anymore. Like, I have time, I'm just not going to spend it on this right now. Right? I think that's a lot of acceptance.
You know, you talked about sleep before, and I've historically had a lot of problems with sleep because my mind at night would turn on. Like, I'd be tired during the day, and I would be like, oh my God, tonight I'm going to sleep so well.
Yeah, right. I've had those moments too.
You're
Yeah.
yawning.
Yeah, you're making me tired right now. Just don't talk about sleep. You know, I'll get ready to go to bed right now, dude.
Okay, just don't snore. I'll take the rest of the show. But it is true that the tools we have in recovery, that where we look at our day, that we look at where our head's at, and then we can journal and get stuff out. If there's something that's eating our lunch, we can process it. We have tools to be able to do that. And how well we're doing, how calm and quiet is our mind at night? Are we riddled with stress and worries and stuff like that? Then there are tools. There are tools in recovery to help us to be more surrendered, to let go and let God, but to really specifically find out and heal, like, what are our big worries? Because if there's something that we really can't do anything about, then we have to let go. And if it's something that we really can do something about, then we have to take incremental steps. We have to pray and find what is it that we need to do one step at a time to be able to do something. But, like, pick a position, either do something or don't do it, right? But when it's stuck in the I don't know, that's when the mind goes. So the fact that you could just, like, pass out at night, it's not something you're holding on to, and you have things that are concerning you. But but at night, you get into, it seems that you get into acceptance at night that the day's over.
I do, and you know what? Since you said that, it's I do have a problem if I'm by myself at night. So I'm in a relationship right now with that person.
And you miss her.
Yeah, that could be it too. But I start to think about all that.
Shame she's not here right now to hear that.
Yeah. So, but I get in this when I'm by myself.
She's
I start
here.
to think of all of the bad things that are happening in my life. But when she's there, my life is a little bit more complete, right? And I just fall right to sleep. So I don't know if that is literally what happens, because it's a few nights ago I was by myself, right? And I thought about all the time, I'm never going to make enough money to afford this house. I'm never going to be able to afford my car. How am I going to take my daughter anywhere? And then she comes back and everything just goes right back to normal. I fall asleep. But literally the job is done.
She's in the studio right now, and so she's hearing all of this. And I can't see her right now because she's, like, behind my camera. But, like, it's so funny. She's probably thinking, yes, I am responsible for some of his happiness.
Yes, you are responsible for my peace, though, for real. And it's until you said that, like, my life is very stressful. But I don't have to feel it all the time.
But that's the other thing. We get to be in relationships where we allow people in.
Yeah.
We get to have true intimacy. You know, we get to be calm and comforted by somebody
I'm a little
else
embarrassed
there.
right now, I'll be honest with you. I wouldn't do that, but it's because it's so crazy true, you know what I mean? That I'm a little embarrassed over it. But
really?
Yeah, I feel like I'm blushing. Am I blushing? No, I should be.
You know, you started red, but then everybody looks red next to me somehow.
But
But
I think it's natural.
No, I think it's beautiful. I feel like in our addiction we can act like we don't need anybody, and you know, life is a we thing. You know, like even recovery is a we thing. You know, and we could be isolated in a group full of people all using drugs and still feel completely alone.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
You know, but not using drugs and alcohol and having tools and healing some of our shame tapes or whatever, like we start to, even in the practice of doing inventories and sharing it and then telling our story, like there's so much intimacy just in what we do, just in recovery, because we become more transparent, more open, more trusting. You know, we're willing to share of ourselves, open ourselves up and say, this was my life, and share so that somebody else can benefit. There's so much, the capacity for intimacy in me has grown. I was not capable of having the kinds of relationships that I have today. I get to have those kinds of relationships today. Yeah. I get to, because I could not do it before.
You know what I was just thinking about is when you were talking about relationships, and my addiction, the people I surrounded myself with were not good people. None of us were good people, right? As far as I'm concerned now, we weren't that great of people. But there are people that are in relationships right now where their significant other is a great person, right? And they're the bad one, right? Like there's nothing about them is good, you know what I mean? And I rely on, there's a specific relationship I'm thinking of where this girl just treats this guy very, very poorly, but he sticks around, right? He always lets her move back in, whatever. I wonder if she ever does find the days that she gets clean, because I don't have this in my experience. Right now I could say that we treat each other poorly because we just didn't care about each other. But in that situation, you literally treated someone poorly that loved you.
Well, that happens all the time, though.
I know, but that's so crazy to think what you would, how you would reflect back.
And plus, you don't really know why he's there. You know, like
fear, all kinds of.
Well, no, I mean, I feel like I'll speak for myself. I was in relationships and situations because on the outside it looked like a very, very dysfunctional situation, but I was getting something out of it. Nothing's all good or bad. I don't even think anybody's really bad. I think that they could just be not in their right mind. You know, I think that they could be so caught up in their ego and fear-based that they do things in some semblance of survival mode, that if they trusted more and if they felt better about themselves and they maybe trusted a higher power, they wouldn't even think of doing. I think that's where forgiveness comes into play, where we recognize that we're all capable of doing all kinds of things that we wouldn't be proud of or we would judge somebody else for doing. We're all capable of it if our narrative was in a certain kind of way. I'm capable of doing anything. I'm capable of hurting somebody in many ways. I know I'm capable of it, and I know I'm capable of attracting suffering as well. I'm capable of that as well. But this is why we do these things. It seems like something so trite, you know, like change your attitude, change your narrative, change how you speak, and watch how things start changing in your life. You know, like have a positive attitude, but don't be in denial. Talk about what's really going on with you and bring it up. But the idea that we get to do something, it allows for us to be like opening presents. You know, like it's like what's today going to be like? It's an adventure. I'm on the back of God's Harley. But if I have to do everything, then everything is just work, you know? And for somebody who even works a lot of hours like I do, I think there's so much fun and so much creativity in it. You know, I get to do that too. But you know what else at the end of the day we get to do? We get to live one day without drugs and alcohol.
Preach it.
We get to.
Yeah, I get to do that. I really do get to do that. And I see people that think that they get to live their lives the way they want, right? Especially in that lifestyle, like you run into them still. And you don't get
like
to
they think they're free.
Yeah.
Because they're free to treat their bodies like garbage cans or just use whatever, right? They're free to do that. But they're not free. They're not free. Because
everything comes with a price.
The addiction is deciding for them. No matter how much they want to tell themselves they can stop at any time and it doesn't have them, go ahead and stop then. Well, why should I?
Yeah, right? Ooh, sucker.
Well, why wouldn't you? You know, but they don't know. Anyway, there's so many things. It's just life is so small when we're in our addictions and when we're not healing. And when we take it one step at a time and we heal, it's amazing how we're like these little tight little buds that like we're just so tight, and then as we start to open up, we're so expansive, we're living for the first time instead of just existing, you know, instead of part of us being self-destructive and part of us being like trying to get and control and whatever, like, you know, there's an exhale that happens. And we get to be alive, like really, not just physically. We get to be alive. I get to have this conversation with you. We didn't know what we were talking about.
No.
You had a tiny bit more of awareness of what we were going to talk about than I did, and not much more. And then I was like, what are we going to talk about tonight? And what we did, we just came. We felt. Don't tell me you don't listen.
Yeah.
We felt to do a show. We felt like the right time was tonight, right? We listened. We didn't go and then do the whole scheduling thing. We both felt that was fine. That was good. And it happened, and your girlfriend got to be here.
Yeah.
You know, and we get to do something by just by letting go and just going for the ride of it. Letting go of the results of it. We trust. We've done it a couple times. We like to hear ourselves talk.
Yeah, we do.
We trust. We trust the process, right? And trusting the process opens us up to be able to experience more. Who knows? Health has improved a lot. You know, things I'm able to do today, you know, I get to do it. You know, I'll say this last thing, you know, like, so I have this spine injury, can't sit in cushy chairs, and like movie theaters have cushy chairs, right? And a friend of mine said, well, let's go to a movie, and we found a way to do it where we brought blankets and we put it down in between the handicap seats, and we picnicked in a movie theater and watched a movie, and it was my first movie in a movie theater in years. This was last year.
Oh, wow.
And you know what? I probably appreciated that movie in that movie theater, even though the movie was dumb. I probably appreciated it more than anybody else who was sitting in those seats, right? It's the attitude of gratitude. Like to really say, I get to do this. We found a way. I get to do this.
I know we keep bringing up the fact that we get to do it because we don't use drugs and alcohol, but we get to do it because we found recovery.
Yes, because we found recovery.
We found
just not
power.
Drinking and doing drugs is not enough. I would be miserable and uncomfortable in my own skin.
I just said this to some people yesterday. I said, if alcohol was a problem, if I stopped drinking, my life should get better, and then it doesn't, right? But then, so it must be my terrible family or my shitty girlfriend, right, or my terrible kids. Oh wait, it's not that either, right? So what's left? Me.
Yeah.
Right, so when I recognize that, now I can build on that. Now I get to do some things, right? Because I'm going to try to figure out a way to build a better version of me.
It's only up.
Yeah.
It's only up. When we take responsibility, it's like we can become empowered. It's like, okay, well then if it's my fault, then let it begin with me. Let me do it. Let me keep healing. And then if that's the case, then things will start to get where they're better and better and better. It's exciting. Recovery is exciting.
It is very exciting.
If you're new, just stick around because the learning curve is a little bit short. Once you get to a place where you recognize, like, wow, like this is the place where I get to learn how to live life on life's terms, right?
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely.
On the show.
I love
Thank
it
you so
every
much.
time.
And let me know if you want to be on a future episode or you have an idea for a topic. It would be good if the topic came, right?
Yeah.
And just go to themeetingspace.com and click on the intake form or catch me on Facebook or whatever. Share this video if with anybody that you feel like it would help, and we'll see you next week.
See you later.
Bye, guys.